They underestimated her age. They underestimated her skin. They never imagined she was about to expose a secret that would shatter their world. What kind of joke is this? A child in my workshop during an official inspection? Mr. Reginald Thorne's sharp voice echoed through Central Motors like a whip, causing all the mechanics to stop working instantly. Zara Vance, 12, was crouched next to the engine of a 2018 Chevrolet, her small hands still holding a wrench. She had arrived from school just 20 minutes ago, as she did every day, to help her father, Marcus Vance, who had been leading the team of mechanics for 15 years. "I'm sorry, Mr. Thorne," Marcus hurried to reply, walking over to his daughter. "Zara, go home now, is not the time." But Thorne raised his hand, interrupting him. The 50-year-old businessman, owner of one of the largest auto repair chains in the city, was there for a surprise inspection that could result in the closure of Central Motors. His impeccable suit and Italian shoes contrasted sharply with the environment of grease and tools. "Wait, Marcus. Let the girl stay." A malicious smile crossed Thorne's face. "Actually, I have a better idea." Zara slowly stood up, her eyes meeting those of the man all the employees feared. At 12, she had already learned to recognize that look, the same one she saw on the faces of some teachers, store security guards, and even neighbors. It was the look of someone who had already decided exactly what she was capable of, based solely on the color of her skin and her age. "You know what, Marcus? Your little girl looks very confident working on that engine." Thorne walked over to a covered area at the back of the workshop where a Porsche 911 that had arrived 3 days earlier was parked. "This one is a special case. My best mechanics from other branches have tried, the engine just won't start. We haven't even been able to run a diagnostic." The laugh that came out of Thorne's throat was calculatedly cruel. "How about we give the expert here a chance? If she can at least figure out what the problem is, I'll consider keeping this place running." A heavy silence fell over the workshop. The 8 mechanics exchanged uncomfortable glances. They all knew that this Porsche had been a complete mystery. Not even Tony Moretti, the veteran with 30 years of experience, had been able to identify what was wrong. "Mr. Thorne, she's just a kid," Marcus tried to intervene, his voice trembling slightly. "Exactly." Thorne crossed his arms, clearly amused. "A child who I'm told spends all day here tinkering with cars. She must know as much as you guys, right?" Zara stood still for a few seconds. Inside, a familiar part of her began to stir, the same feeling she got when she solved math problems her classmates thought were impossible, or when she fixed broken electronics her neighbors threw away. Over the past 2 years, she had noticed small details that mechanics sometimes missed, little noises, electrical patterns, connections that didn't make sense. Her father thought it was just childish curiosity, but Zara knew it was something more. "All right," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. "I accept." Thorne laughed loudly, turning to the other men. "Did you hear that? The girl accepts." He clapped slowly, as if applauding a circus performance. "But let's make this more interesting. If she succeeds, not only do I keep the shop open, but I give the whole team a bonus. If she fails..." He paused dramatically. "Well, I think you know what happens." As everyone watched in tense silence, Zara walked over to the Porsche. Her small hands touched the hood delicately, and for a brief moment, something changed in her expression. It was no longer the face of a nervous child, it was the focused expression of someone who had just accepted a challenge she might just know how to solve. Thorne had no idea that for the past 6 months, Zara had been secretly studying the most advanced technical manuals she could find, hidden in her father's office. He had no idea that she had developed a theory about that particular Porsche from the first day it arrived at the shop. There, in front of all those doubtful looks and Thorne's arrogant smile, Zara maintained a calmness that only exists in those who already know exactly where to find the answers that everyone else is looking for in the wrong places. If this story of courage and determination is touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to find out how a simple underestimation would turn into the biggest mistake Thorne had ever made in his entire career. Zara walked slowly around the Porsche, her eyes scanning every detail of the exposed engine. Thorne crossed his arms, clearly enjoying the spectacle he had created. Is this going to take long, Princess? Some of us have real work to do. The mechanics gathered in a semicircle, some with pitying expressions, others with genuine curiosity. Tony Moretti, the team veteran, whispered to Marcus, "Man, this isn't right. She's just a kid." "I know," Marcus replied through clenched teeth, "but if I interfere now, he'll shut down the shop on the spot." Zara completely ignored the comments around her. Her small hands glided smoothly over different components of the engine, occasionally stopping at specific points. To any casual observer, it looked like she was just pretending to understand something, but Tony noticed something different. The girl wasn't touching things at random, she was following a logical sequence, first the ignition system, then the fuel system, then the electrical system. It was exactly the same order an experienced mechanic would follow. "Interesting," Zara muttered, more to herself than to the others. Thorne laughed loudly. "What's the matter? Have you figured out that it's on top of your head? Don't worry, no one will blame you for giving up." But Zara didn't give up. Instead, she crouched down and pointed to a small black box connected to the onboard computer. "This module here, have you checked to see if it's sending the correct codes to the central system?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Tony frowned. None of them had thought to check that specific component. It was a relatively new part that most of the older mechanics weren't completely familiar with. "Of course we checked." Thorne lied blatantly. "We checked everything. The problem is this car needs a level of expertise that you clearly don't have." Zara nodded calmly. "That makes sense. It's just that I read about those modules a few months ago." She stopped abruptly, as if she had said something she shouldn't have. "You read about them where?" Tony asked, genuinely curious. Zara looked at her father, who looked equally surprised. In the technical manuals in the office. When you're not looking, Dad, I sometimes borrow them to study." Marcus blinked several times. "Zara, those manuals are for certified mechanics. Some of them are in technical English." "I know," she replied simply. "That's why I use the translator on my phone for the hardest parts. And there are some videos on YouTube that explain it well." Thorne let out a sarcastic laugh. "That's perfect. The girl thinks YouTube University is enough to fix a $200,000 Porsche." He turned to the other men. "Are you listening to this? She wants to fix a problem that expert engineers couldn't fix using YouTube videos." But Zara wasn't fazed. Instead, she continued examining the engine with a precision that was beginning to make even Thorne uncomfortable. "The direct injection system on this model has a peculiarity," she said, her voice gaining confidence. "If the control module doesn't recognize the correct digital signature, it shuts down the entire ignition as a safety measure." Tony moved closer. "What do you mean, digital signature?" "It's like an electronic password," Zara explained, now clearly in familiar territory. "Each part has a unique code. If the computer thinks a part has been replaced without authorization, it refuses to work. It's to prevent car theft." One of the younger mechanics, Jake, cleared his throat. I've never heard of that." "That's because it's relatively new technology," Zara continued, pointing to different connections. "Most technical courses haven't updated their curriculum yet. But the latest manuals explain everything." Thorne realized he was losing control of the situation. His expression changed from amusement to irritation. "Enough small talk. If you're so smart, prove it. Get the damn car running, or admit you're just a stuck-up kid who read a few pages on the internet." The tension in the air was palpable. Zara took a deep breath and looked directly at Thorne. "All right, but I'll need a few minutes alone with the car, and a computer with internet access to download the reprogramming software." "What software?" Marcus asked, increasingly surprised by his daughter's knowledge. "To reset the digital signatures," Zara replied as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "It's not hard, you just have to know where to look." Thorne crossed his arms, his face red with irritation. I'm not letting some brat mess with the electronic system of a car that's worth more than this entire workshop. That's when Tony stepped forward. Let her try, Thorne. If she messes it up, you were going to throw the car away anyway, weren't you? And if she succeeds? He paused significantly. Well, then you get a working Porsche for free. Zara looked at Tony gratefully. He had just given her exactly the opening she needed. For the past 6 months, while everyone thought she was just playing around in the shop, Zara had been secretly deciphering the most complex patterns of modern automotive electronics. She knew exactly what was wrong with that Porsche. She had identified the problem on her first day but hadn't had the courage to speak up. Now, with all eyes on her and her father's shop at stake, she had no choice. As Thorne grumbled his reluctant approval, Zara mentally prepared herself to reveal knowledge that would leave everyone speechless. What none of them knew was that over the past few weeks, she had quietly hacked into the shop's diagnostic system to study similar cases. The little girl they had underestimated was about to prove that she had learned things that some engineers took years to master. And Thorne, who had bet his reputation on her incompetence, was about to discover that he had seriously underestimated the wrong person. 15 minutes, Zara said calmly, connecting her personal laptop to the Porsche's diagnostic system. That's all I need. Mr. Reginald Thorne laughed nervously, but his laughter sounded forced. Something about the girl's absolute confidence was beginning to bother him. 15 minutes to solve what expert engineers couldn't do in 3 days. You're delusional, girl. But Zara was already completely focused on the screen. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with a precision that made Tony Moretti blink several times in surprise. These weren't the hesitant movements of a child playing, they were the confident commands of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Dad, she said without looking up from the screen, do you remember when I told you I was studying the technical manuals? Marcus nodded, still processing everything that was happening. I wasn't just studying. I was hacking. An icy silence filled the workshop. Thorne took a step forward, his face beginning to redden. What did you say? Zara continued typing, completely unperturbed. 6 months ago, I hacked into the Porsche diagnostic system, not to steal anything, she added quickly, noticing the shocked expressions around her, but because I wanted to understand why so many cars were coming in here with the same problem you guys couldn't fix. Thorne was now clearly nervous. That's impossible. A child can't hack Porsche security systems. You're right, Zara agreed, finally looking at him. A normal child couldn't. But I discovered I'm not a normal child when I started noticing patterns that no one else saw. On the laptop screen, code began to scroll in sequences that looked random to everyone except Zara. This particular Porsche has the same problem as 17 other identical cars that have come into Wilcor partner garages over the last 8 months. Do you want to know why? The question hung in the air like a threat. Thorne tried to maintain his composure, but his hands were shaking slightly. I have no idea what you're implying. I'm not implying anything, Zara interrupted, her voice now laden with an authority that silenced even the adults. I'm proving it. She turned the laptop screen so everyone could see. A list of dozens of serial numbers appeared, each with dates and locations. Every one of these cars was deliberately sabotaged on the assembly line. The control module was programmed to fail exactly 90 days after first ignition. Tony moved closer to the screen, his eyes scanning the data. My God, this is real. Completely real, Zara confirmed. And here's the interesting part. She clicked on another tab, revealing contracts and internal documents. All of these defective cars were subsequently repurchased by Porsche itself for a fraction of their market value, easily repaired by removing a line of code, and resold as refurbished models with profit margins of 300%. Thorne was now visibly sweating. Where did you get these documents? This is confidential information. Zara smiled for the first time since this had all started. From the same source that told me that you, Mr. Thorne, receive a 15% commission on every defective car that your network of repair shops can't fix. The silence that followed was deafening. Thorne opened and closed his mouth several times, like a fish out of water. You can't prove it. I can, Zara said, opening another window on her laptop, because I also hacked into your corporate email account. The screen showed hundreds of messages between Thorne and Porsche executives, detailing exactly the scheme Zara had described, specific instructions on which cars to leave unresolved, lists of participating repair shops, and bank transfers with the exact amounts of the commissions. Marcus Vance slowly approached, reading the messages over his daughter's shoulder. His expression changed from surprise to pure outrage. Thorne, you knew all along. You knew how to fix these cars. He didn't just know, Zara continued. He actively instructed the mechanics not to look for real solutions. Look here. She pointed to a specific message, direct instruction, keep staff focused on traditional diagnostics. Do not mention possibility of software reprogramming. Declare unserviceable after 48 hours. Jake, the youngest mechanic, stepped forward with growing anger in his voice. You made us look incompetent on purpose. How many times did we stay here late trying to solve problems you knew were impossible to fix the way you told us to? Thorne tried one last desperate gambit. She's a hacker. A criminal. You're going to believe a child who broke into systems illegally? Maybe, Zara said calmly. But you're going to have to believe them too. She clicked one last time, and the screen showed a live feed from the shop's Facebook page. There were 847 views in real time, and the number was climbing rapidly. Every conversation, every revelation, every accidental confession Thorne had made was being broadcast live. I turned on the broadcast when I started hacking the system, Zara explained, watching Thorne turn completely pale. I thought people should know the truth about why his cars were never ready. Tony let out a low whistle. Zara, you recorded everything. Every word he said. Comments on the live stream began to appear on the screen like a flood. Is that Thorne from Central Motors? That son of a charged me $3,000 saying my car was unrepairable. My sister lost her job because her car broke down and she couldn't get to work. This guy knew how to fix it. Has anyone called the FBI? This is fraud on a national scale. Thorne looked at the screen, at the angry faces around him, and finally at Zara, who was watching him with an expression that mixed pity and iron determination. Why? He asked, his voice coming out as a defeated whisper. Zara turned off the feed and closed the laptop. When she spoke, her voice carried a wisdom that seemed impossible for her 12 years. Because you bet that a black girl from the projects would never be smart enough to figure out your scheme. And because every time you looked at me, you saw only what you wanted to see, someone too inferior to be a threat. She paused, looking directly into Thorne's eyes. The truth is, I've been tracking this pattern for months, waiting for the right opportunity to expose everything. You gave me that opportunity the moment you decided to publicly humiliate me. Outside, the sound of sirens began to grow closer. Someone had clearly called the authorities during the live broadcast. Thorne glanced at the door, then back at Zara, finally realizing that he had underestimated not just a child, but a mind that had outmatched him in every way. As the sirens grew louder and Thorne realized that his career had just been destroyed by a girl he considered inferior, Zara remained calm, knowing that she had taken the first step toward changing not only her own life but the lives of everyone who had been deceived by the same corrupt system. What none of them knew yet was that this live broadcast had not only exposed a local fraud scheme, it had caught the attention of far more powerful people who were about to offer Zara opportunities that would forever change what it means to be underestimated. 3 months later, Zara Vance sat in a conference room in downtown Seattle, surrounded by executives from Tesla, Google, and Microsoft. Her presentation on automotive fraud detection systems had just received a standing ovation from 200 engineers and investors. Congratulations, Zara, said Jennifer Walsh, VP of Tesla. Your real-time detection system proposal could revolutionize the entire industry. We're talking about a $2 million consulting contract to start. The girl who 3 months earlier had been seen as just the mechanic's daughter was now being courted by the world's largest technology companies. Her live broadcast had gone viral, generating over 15 million views and attracting the attention of the national media. Zara smiled, but her mind quickly returned home. "Thank you so much for the opportunity, but I need to discuss it with my family first. And there's one condition: I want part of the project to be developed in my father's workshop, with his team. Tony, Jake, and the others deserve to be part of this story." Across town, Reginald Thorne was cleaning his one-bedroom apartment. After the scandal, he had not only lost his job but also faced federal fraud charges that resulted in 18 months of house arrest and a $500,000 fine. His wife had filed for divorce, taking half of what remained of his assets with her. The 47 repair shops he had run were sold to cover compensation for aggrieved customers. He now lived on a small Social Security check and occasional gigs as an automotive consultant for small repair shops, ironically, the very kind of place he used to despise. "I can't believe it was destroyed by a child," he muttered to himself as he watched a TV report about Zara receiving a national award for young innovators. Meanwhile, at Central Motors, now renamed Vance and Daughter Automotive Technology, Marcus Vance watched proudly as his daughter explained engineering concepts to a team of journalists. The workshop had been transformed into a training and development center where young people from the community learned advanced automotive technology. "Dad," Zara said, stepping away from the cameras for a moment, "remember when you told me I should study more and play less with cars?" Marcus laughed, his eyes shining with tears of pride. "Looks like you proved you were right all along." Tony approached, holding a tablet with a new diagnostic system Zara had developed. "You know, Zara, we spent 30 years in this business thinking we knew everything there was to know about cars. You showed us we still had a lot to learn." "It wasn't about knowing more," Zara replied. "It was about looking with different eyes. You knew the right things, you just didn't know that other people were preventing you from finding the answers." Jake, who had been promoted to supervisor of the new electronic diagnostics division, nodded in admiration. "That 12-year-old girl taught us more about fairness than any adult we've ever known." 6 months after the scandal, Zara's system had been implemented in more than 2,000 repair shops across the country, helping to identify and resolve similar cases of corporate sabotage. She had founded a non-profit organization called Clean Codes that offered free automotive technology training to young people from underserved communities. During a talk at a local school, a 14-year-old boy raised his hand. "Zara, how did you have the courage to stand up to that man? He was so much more powerful than you." Zara smiled, remembering how she felt that day in the repair shop. "You know, he really was more powerful at first. He had money, influence, and control over my father's job. But he made a mistake." "What was that?" "He confused power with intelligence, and he confused my age and skin color with incompetence. When you underestimate someone based on prejudice, you give that person the greatest possible advantage, the element of surprise." The audience of teenagers listened intently as Zara continued. "Thorne thought he knew my limits before he even knew me. That made him lazy, arrogant, and careless. He never imagined I could be a threat, so he never protected himself against me." A girl in the back of the room raised her hand. "But what if you had failed? What if you hadn't been able to prove what he was doing?" Zara laughed. "I couldn't fail, because I already knew the answer before he challenged me. I had spent months studying that specific problem. When he gave me the opportunity to show what I knew, I was 100% prepared." "The best revenge isn't destroying those who hurt you," Zara concluded, her voice echoing through the room. "It's becoming so good at what you do that they realize they made the biggest mistake of their lives by underestimating you." 2 years later, Zara was studying engineering at MIT through a special program for gifted young people, while keeping her consulting business running remotely. Thorne, meanwhile, had tried several times to get work at other automotive companies, but the scandal followed him wherever he went. The last time anyone saw him, he was asking for a second chance at a small repair shop in the suburbs, only to be rejected by the owner who recognized his name from the news. Zara proved that true revenge is not bringing your enemies down to your level, but rising so high that they become irrelevant. She turned an attempt at humiliation into the foundation of a career that changed not only her life but an entire industry. The girl who was challenged to fix an impossible engine not only fixed the engine, she fixed an entire system of corruption, created opportunities for hundreds of young people like her, and proved that the biggest mistake anyone can make is to judge a person's potential by their appearance. If this story of determination and justice touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Sometimes the world needs people like Zara to remind us that true strength doesn't come from the power you have, but from the intelligence with which you use it. Leave a comment. Have you ever been underestimated by someone who later regretted it? Share your experience. Stories like Zara's prove that our origins never determine our destiny, only our determination.